According to the American Academy of Dermatology, 1 in 5 Americans will develop skin cancer in their lifetime, but the diagnosis can come too late. For some people with darker skin tones, 21% of melanoma cases in African Americans are diagnosed when cancer is spread, and they are less likely to survive.
Joining us now to talk more about sun safety for the summer is dermatologist Dr. Jeremy Brower. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. Happy No Friday.
Yes.
All right, well, let's dive right in here. Skin cancer can affect anyone regardless of skin color, but how come people with darker skin tones get diagnosed later with actually, unfortunately, a lower chance of survival?
To your point, it's all about the fact that anyone with skin can develop skin cancer, and it happens to be the most common cancer in humans. Fortunately, when caught early, and diagnosed early, it's treatable and highly curable. The problem is when the diagnosis, as you mentioned, is delayed, unfortunately, the cure rates drop. So why are some of the reasons that might happen specifically in this population? There could be the misconception or misunderstanding. Increased melanin protects, and therefore I don't need to worry. So maybe there's changes in preventative behavior and in awareness. So let's say that they not only don't protect themselves from the sun, but may not visit their dermatologist for regular skin checks. They may not check themselves regularly, and they may dismiss certain growths on the skin that could be of concern. The other part of the story is that not all skin cancer is directly related to the sun. We generally say about 90% of all skin cancers are related to sun, but there are that other 10% that are not. That could be genetics, and also it could be in areas of where we may not think of sun exposure as possibilities.
You know, I've known a bunch of people who have had situations with like skin cancer, like early stages skin cancer, and they've had it, taken care of. And a lot of times, like I've noticed, like the nose, like right here, like the Band-Aid over the nose, like that's a very, very common. I've noticed. Is that one of like the big spots, like right here? Are there other spots too?
So yes, anywhere a sun exposed, so head and neck. It's very important to think about those ears. A lot of people forget to apply sunscreen on the ears, that wear the wide-brimmed hats, but it's sun is not the only story, and we do see skin cancer develop in areas where there's decreased sun exposure, palms, soles, under the nails. So it's very important that we all pay attention to ourselves and look for anything new, changing, or unusual.
And you mentioned sunscreen. Let's talk more about it. It's something that should be worn every day, not just for those days at the beach, but there are also a lot of stories coming out about the chemicals in the sunscreen that may or may not be good for you. What specifically should we be looking for when we're at the drugstore trying to pick which one to purchase?
Yeah, there are lots of different sunscreens, and there are stories out there. There's been some research. I think at this time, I feel very confident saying the risk of not wearing sunscreen outweighs the risk of wearing sunscreen. That said, when looking for the right sunscreens to choose, you want to look for something that says that it's both UVA and UVB protective. Another way of saying that is that it'll be broad spectrum. But there are certain chemicals that have gotten a lot of attention. There is some research that shows that they can be absorbed by the body, specifically octinoxate, oxybenzone. But at this time, again, strongly would suggest using that sunscreen when you plan to be outside.
It was interesting, and I don't think we really talk about this very often when we talk about sunscreen, but just because we're talking about, especially people of color, there are certain sunscreens where you'll put it on and you'll have almost like an ashy look to you, which nobody wants, right? There are others that aren't like that, right? As I've gone through and worn stuff, there are some I'm like, oh, I can't wear that stuff. That stuff's awful. I'll look like, like ashen, right? So what are there certain things that are in it that can contribute to that or not?
There are. So you're really describing the physical sunscreens or the mineral blockers, and then the chemical sunscreens. Okay. The truth is, the best sunscreen is the one that you're going to use. So if you don't like the look or the feel, try to find one that does work for you. Mineral sunscreens tend to have zinc oxide or titanium dioxide in them. Physical blockers do just that. The idea is they block the rays from penetrating the skin. They sit on the surface. So those are the ones you're probably describing that give you more of that white, chalky look. The chemical sunscreens, they tend to go on a little smoother, leave a little less of any kind of discoloration on the skin. Those work a little differently. And chemical sunscreens take some time. You want the skin to absorb those chemicals, which then ultimately absorb the ultraviolet rays, and then they transfer them into heat energy that's released by the skin. Some individuals do better with one or the other. I like to, generally my patients who can't do well with sunscreens that are causing any possibility of allergic reaction or sensitivity, or if they have certain conditions like rosacea or melasma that are made worse by heat, I tend to suggest that they use a physical sunscreen.
All right, but bottom line,
Where?
Put that sunscreen
Yeah.
on
Use it.
every day. All right, Dr. Brower, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.